Hello, welcome back to my channel. I've got another budgeting video for you guys. So today I'm going to be talking about 4 more budgeting techniques that you could potentially use. I'm also going to be talking about the pros and cons to each method. And the reason why I decided to do another budgeting video is because in my previous budgeting video, I only spoke about 3 methods. And actually, those might not be right for you. So I'm hoping that in this video, at least one of these methods will be useful. And at the end of the video, I'm also going to be sharing with you the methods that I have actually tried out so that you can see whether they are actually realistic or if they even work. My name is Veronia, and if you are new here, I talk about all things to do with money, your career, and having a positive mindset for success. So if that does sound like your cup of tea, then be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell notification below as well. So in my previous video, I'm not even sure I actually explained why budgeting is important and why we should be doing it. So why do we need to budget in the first place? Like, what is actually the point? Why can't we just enjoy life, spend money, and do whatever we want? Not so fast. The reason why budgeting is important is because it allows us to take control of our money rather than letting the money take control of us. If you decide to budget, then you're able to have a spending plan, and hopefully it does mean that you will spend less than you earn. So basically, a budget helps you to stop overspending, and it might even keep you out of debt. And I think this is going to be really important, especially now that lockdown is easing and people are able to start going out again. You want to be sure that you still have an element of control. So now that we know why we need to budget, let's talk about the different methods you could use. So the first budgeting method you could potentially use is called the cash envelope system. And it's kind of self-explanatory, but what it essentially means is that your cash is kept in envelopes. So basically what it means is as soon as you get paid, you would go to the cash machine and take your cash out. Obviously, you'd probably leave payments like your mortgage or any utilities that you pay online, but everything else in terms of your spending, you would actually convert it into cash. Now, obviously these days, I think most people tend to use their debit or credit card to pay for things, so it is a really interesting method. So once you've got your cash, you'd probably put that to the side, and then you would have envelopes which will have categories for your spending. So that might include money for food, eating out, entertainment, clothes. It could also include categories like birthdays and Christmas gifts as well. So after that, you would label each separate envelope, and then you would decide how much cash you're actually going to put in each category. And if you want to go even further, you might even decide to split it by the week. So let's say you've decided to allocate £100 to your food budget. You might decide that you want to spend a little bit more in the first week. So what you might do is say, I'm going to spend £55 in week 1. So I'd put that in an envelope. Then in week 2, I might decide I'm going to spend another £15. And then in week 3, again, another 15. And week 4, another £15. I'm literally just checking my maths to make sure that adds up to £100. I think it does. So once you've allocated all your categories and your cash, that would be your money for the week or for the month. So once you've sorted that out, and let's say you've got that £55 in week 1, you would literally just take that envelope to the supermarket. In theory, when you go to the supermarket for that first week, you would not be taking any extra money. Once that £55 is done, it's over. And it's the same with all the other categories as well. Once that money is finished, it's finished. You should not be overspending at all. So this method is really good if you really want to be strict on yourself and you want to stop overspending in certain areas. And this is because you're actually able to track exactly how much you're spending in each category, especially when you're getting towards the end of the month, because then you can see actually how much you have left and how much you might have spent already. It also means that you have to really think about your spending habits, because if you go to Lidl, for example, and you end up spending about £57, you've only got £55 cash left. So that £2 has got to go somewhere. So if you really want to be strict with your money, then this budget method could be useful for you. However, there are some downsides as well. First of all, since we're still in a pandemic, a lot of businesses are deciding not to accept any cash at all. So you might have to carefully think about where you spend your money. Secondly, the fact that you have to actually travel to the cash machine and then have to come back and then split your money into different categories could be considered as a very long process for a lot of people. So this method does have its pros and cons, but if it's right for you, again, it's called personal finance for a reason. The next budgeting method you could use is automation. Now, some people would argue that this isn't actually budgeting at all because you're not actually telling your money what to do. Essentially, what you're trying to do is automate everything that you can, and with the rest of the money, you can spend it on anything that you like. So basically, once you get paid, you would either have a standing order or direct debit that would automatically take money out of your account. So that would include things like, again, mortgage, rent, any bills or utilities, any other payments you might have, and any savings or investments as well. So again, as an example, you might get paid on the 31st of July, and then all your standing orders or your direct debits might be set for the 1st of August. So then after the 1st, once all the money is taken out, you can basically spend the rest of the money on anything else. So obviously the good thing about this method is that once you've actually set it up, you can just leave it. You don't actually have to do any budgeting whatsoever after. It's a lot easier as well because you don't have to keep crunching numbers. But that's where there's also a disadvantage, because you're not actually telling your money what to do with the rest of your spending. You could still end up overspending in some areas as well. Once you've taken care of your direct debits and standing orders, there are some things that you just can't do a standing order for. So things like food, eating out, entertainment wouldn't actually be included. And why that's a problem is because if you have a limited amount of money left to spend, if you haven't actually budgeted that, you could end up spending about 90% of that money on things like entertainment, and then you realize you don't really have enough money for food. So again, it does have its pros and cons, but actually if you're really good at managing your money, or you might even be financially independent already, this could be a great method for you. The third budgeting technique you could use is the reverse budgeting method. And again, this is quite an interesting one, because instead of focusing on your expenses, you're actually going to be focusing on your savings instead. So basically what you would do is actually figure out how much you need to save per month first, and then you can just spend the rest of the money. So this really emphasizes on paying yourself first, which I do really like. And actually you will find that the more you start to increase your saving, the less you are likely to spend. So you will naturally start to reduce your spending overall in the long term. So as an example, you might decide to actually list all your savings goals first, and then you would essentially divide that by the month, and that would give you how much you need to save. So how this would work would be that you list your goals for saving first. So once you've got that savings goal, you would then need to work out how much you need to save per month. So as an example, let's say that over the next 5 years, your savings goal might include, firstly, contributing about £2,000 a year to your stocks and shares ISA, and you might also want a 3-month emergency fund of £6,000. Already done a previous video on that, by the way, link in the description below. And lastly, you have decided you want to save up for your first house, which is about £200,000, which would include a 15% deposit, so that's about £30,000. Obviously not including any extra fees. So in total, over the 5 years, you would want to be saving £46,000, which means your monthly savings would add up to just under £767 a month. Remember, you could also do this for any medium or long-term goals that you might have, like financial independence or retirement, for example. So as soon as you get paid, before you do anything else, £767 would come out of your account every single month, and then you can spend the rest. So once you've actually got your savings goal, this method could be considered really easy to maintain, because similar to the previous technique I mentioned, you could then automate that savings amount each month. Again, there is a con which is very similar to the automation method. It basically does mean you do have a lack of control on the rest of your spending. But I would say it's definitely a great technique if you really struggle to pay yourself first. Now, the fourth budgeting technique is known as the value-based budget. Basically, you would factor in what you actually value, and that essentially would become a priority in your budget. Of course, we all value different things. You might value experiences, like doing different activities. You might value going out to eat a lot. You might even value having investments. So when you're doing your budget, you might be willing to then cut back on areas that you don't necessarily value as much. So as an example, you might decide to actually cut back on subscriptions like Netflix because you realize that you prefer outdoor experiences, so you would rather use your money for that instead. So I think that a really big advantage to this is that you're more likely to appreciate the budget because it's actually based on what you value. But again, with pros, there are usually some cons as well. You could still end up overspending, especially if what you value is quite expensive. And also, if you don't value things like saving and investing, that could potentially be a huge detriment to your future finances. But on the other hand, if you do value things that will improve your future, then this could be a really good method for you. So when I do my budgeting, I actually do a mixture of these techniques. Of course, from my previous budgeting video, you will probably know that I use the zero-based budget system. And if you haven't actually watched that video, then I will put a link in the description below. So I do use automation in the beginning where I set standing orders or direct debit for some of my bills. So I have a standing order for my rent, any charities, and then I also have a direct debit for my phone bill as well. I also do the reverse budgeting method as well as the zero-based budget. So before I even think about spending money in other areas, I always pay myself first. So I put my money straight into my savings account. And I think the reason why I partly do the reverse budget is because I do value saving and investing a lot more than other things. So I think I definitely would say that I've had quite good experience with those 3 methods. The only thing that I probably haven't really done is the cash envelope system. And I think that's just mainly because I prefer to do things online. And because I use online apps like Monzo, I can actually track exactly how much I've been spending. So for me, I feel like I kind of do something similar already. So if you did like this video, then please do like, comment and subscribe, as it does really help with the YouTube algorithm. I am a very small YouTuber, so I would really appreciate it. Again, I post every single Friday, so I will see you next week.